Hello everyone, this is the second part of obscure anime games on the PS2. If you haven't seen the previous part, go check it out whenever you can. Just a reminder that this type of series won't cover visual novels, as I personally don't play them, but there should be plenty of other games to show here. Without further ado, let's start. When I first tried Bleach Erabareshi Tamashii, I didn't like it. I felt the game was bland. But then I said, okay, let's give it another shot. And surprisingly, the game turned out to be quite okay. Not the best, but not the worst thing to ever exist either. I'd say this game is quite similar to Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles. Bleach Erabareshi Tamashii is a mission-centric hack-and-slash game based on the iconic manga by Teikoku. Unfortunately, it doesn't follow the manga or anime storyline. Instead, it's a clear cash grab iteration. Although it was released exclusively in Japan, the game is thankfully quite accessible to everyone. Die-hard Bleach fans will sadly find out that Erabareshi Tamashii is not that great. The gameplay can get repetitive fast, the music is uninspired, and the overall presentation feels shallow. One of the most frustrating aspects is the absence of a lock-on system, which only worsens the deeper you get into the game. The only redeeming factor in this game is the ability to chain combos by pressing the X button, then rapidly alternating between square and X to build up the combo gauge. Once it's full, you can unleash a devastating special attack with the circle button. If you don't master this technique, you'll never finish the game. As a long-time Bleach fan, I found this game to be okay. Like I said, it isn't the best or the worst game out there, but it had potential to be an even better game, but sadly it falls far short. I can only recommend this to those who enjoy janky, flawed games for the novelty factor. Even then, you will find this game repetitive. Based on the obscure Busou Renkin manga by Nobuhiro Watsuki, the same creator behind Rurouni Kenshin, this game is a full-fledged Musou-style action experience. The story follows the anime adaptation and you'll see plenty of familiar faces from the series making an appearance. The art style is vibrant and colorful, and the gameplay, while identical to several Musou games you've played already, is genuinely fun. I especially like how the game rewards you with extra experience if you manage to pull off two-handed hits combos. It sounds easy on paper, but pulling it off is definitely a challenge. Sadly, the game never saw a release outside Japan, and I doubt many people have even heard of the Busou Renkin manga, let alone the game. You'll need a basic understanding of Japanese to follow the story and navigate menus, especially when it comes to upgrading your stats, which becomes crucial later in the game. Still, give this game a shot. It's surprisingly fun and works great on an emulator using a few tweaks. Did you know that Suda51 once worked on two anime-based games? The first was Samurai Champloo. Many of us remember the anime fondly. Its music, mysterious vibes, and eccentric characters were a work of art. So it was fantastic to see Suda51 successfully channel that same magic into a video game adaptation. Samurai Champloo can be played in two different ways, either as a basic hack and slash where you mindlessly mash buttons until boredom hits you and you end up turning off the console and go to sleep, or if you get creative with your combos, you'll notice the game evolve from sluggish to stylishly and colorfully fast-paced. It rewards experimentation. Once you get into the groove, it really shines. Grasshopper Manufacturer also nailed the soundtrack. It's packed with stylish, energetic beats that complement the gameplay perfectly. And just like the anime, the game keeps that mysterious offbeat tone intact. The story isn't simple to decipher, and that's part of the charm. Also, you can choose between Mugen and Jin, each with their own storylines. And if you want to fully understand the plot, you'll need to play through both paths. Just a heads up though, the final boss is no joke. Be prepared for a real challenge. I have finally found a game that comes close to Bullet Witch.
I finally found it!
Except it's worse. Mahoutsukai Kurohime is a mediocre third-person shooter based on the obscure manga by Masanori Katakura. Unfortunately, the game does little justice to its source material. The manga is quite interesting if you don't know about this though, but the game? Terrible. It's janky, flawed and riddled with issues. To make matters worse, you apparently can't even save your progress in story mode. The controls are clunky and the game barely explains how anything works. I had to figure things out through trial and error, mostly by dying a few times just to get the hang of it. Even then, some boss fights make absolutely no sense. You have 3 special moves, which you can circle through by pressing R2 and clicking on the triangle button to activate them. The enemies will usually throw a few collectibles on the ground. Once collected, your weapon bullets change from fire and ice to thunder and even a shotgun. The shotgun in this game is useless by the way. Thankfully, you can restart the level when you die, but that quickly becomes tedious, especially when you realize how absurdly overpowered and rigid some bosses are. I can't recommend this game. What I do recommend is reading the manga instead. It's far more enjoyable. But if you're still curious and insist on giving the game a shot, make sure you rely heavily on save states in the emulator. You'll need them if you want to make it through to the end. It's criminal that Project Arms never got another game. While this one is far from perfect, it's an okay and short arcade-style beat-em-up that deserves your time. You play as Ryu Takatsuki as he tears through waves upon waves of enemies in chaotic combat. You won't be fighting alone either, your friends will join you along the way. The combat itself is serviceable, but the camera is a mess and the lack of a lock-on system makes regular combat segments frustrating. Also, later boss fights are insanely unbalanced, with some of them just spamming attacks non-stop. That said, this game had real potential. With a bit more polish and a proper sequel, it could have been something fantastic. Thankfully, you don't need to understand Japanese to make it through the game, but be warned, it's no walk in the park. The difficulty can be pretty unforgiving. Soul Eater is a 2D fighter based on the Soul Eater manga and anime. There's not a whole lot to say about this one. It plays exactly how you'd expect if you've spent time with other anime-based fighters. You've got a modest roster featuring fan-favorite characters like Maka, Black Star, Dead the Kid and others from the series. The visuals are vibrant and stay true to the anime's aesthetic, while the soundtrack complements the action nicely. Controls are responsive enough and the overall gameplay is serviceable. It's nothing amazing, but if you're a fan of Soul Eater, it's worth giving this one a shot. It's not incredible, but it's certainly not bad either. Ichigeki Sachuu is a simple and fun third-person action adventure where you play as a tiny doll robot tasked with exterminating insects of all sorts, everything from mosquitoes and cockroaches to centipedes and other monstrous creepy crawlies. The game is based on an obscure one-volume manga by Kunihiko Tanaka, which even received a short OVA adaptation in 2004. Strangely enough, it was Konami out of all companies out there who picked up the rights and turned it into a game. A surprising move, considering how obscure the source material is. In the game, you're thrown into missions where you slash and shoot your way through swarms of insects. Your doll starts off with a knife and a gun, but you'll earn money after each mission to buy new weapons, ammo, clothes, and upgrades. But there's a tiny problem. Everything runs on a battery timer. If the battery runs out mid-mission, it's an instant game over. You'll need to move fast and plan ahead, because the game rarely gives you the option to recharge. Unfortunately, the experience is held back by a clunky camera and a poorly implemented lock-on system, both of which can make combat feel more frustrating than it should be. And while it's not impossible to play without Japanese knowledge, you'll need at least a basic understanding to navigate the customization menus and make sense of what the hell is happening. Banpresto once published the best Rurouni Kenshin game only to keep it imprisoned in Japan. Unlike the usual Rurouni Kenshin fighting game adaptations we've seen thus far, this one is a full-fledged action RPG based on Nobuhiro Watsuki's iconic manga. The story follows the Kyoto Inferno arc where Kenshin must face off against the infamous Makoto Shishio and his minions. The game features a semi-open world to explore, complete with NPCs to interact with and objectives to complete as you progress. Unfortunately, without a basic understanding of Japanese, you won't get far, which is a real shame because this game is genuinely fantastic. The combat system is solid and the art style captures the spirit of the series beautifully, and Kenshin isn't the only playable character. You'll also get to control Sagara Sanosuke and Hajime Saito, each bringing their unique combat style to the table. Honestly, this game is screaming for an English fan translation. This is one of the most faithful and enjoyable adaptations of Rurouni Kenshin out there that more people need to know about. Now here's a game most people won't even mention, Steamboy, based on the anime film of the same name by Katsuhiro Otomo, the legendary mind behind Akira. Surprisingly, this game was developed by none other than Cavia, the same studio that is known for delivering some of the most mixed reviewed games out there, so you can already guess what kind of ride you're in for. The game follows the story of the movie pretty closely. You play as Rei, navigating through a massive castle in an attempt to stop Edward's team. Most of the gameplay revolves around solving light puzzles, collecting gears, activating levers, finding missing items, and moving platforms to progress. The entire premise is to keep climbing the castle until you finally reach and confront Edward. But the real problem lies in the combat. It's clunky and annoying at times. Rei uses a steam-powered weapon to fight off enemies and bosses, but there's a major drawback. Every time you fire it, Rei gets pushed backward, and sometimes that recoil literally launches you off the edge of a platform and straight to your doom. Combine that with stiff controls and a camera that seems more like your enemy than your ally, and you've got a recipe for some serious frustration and headache. Now, to be fair, the level design isn't too bad, it's okay, and the steampunk-inspired art direction is genuinely nice to look at. I also appreciate how accessible the game is despite being a Japanese exclusive. You can pick it up and play without needing to know much Japanese. But do I recommend it? Honestly, not really. Unless you've got a high tolerance for janky combat, clumsy controls, and accidental deaths from falling off platforms, you're better off skipping this one entirely. Just watch the movie instead, it's much better. Meitantein Conan Daiei Teikoku no Isan is a game I first tried back in 2021, but I couldn't get very far into it. It wasn't until this year that I decided to give it another shot after learning that it had received an English fan patch, and honestly I'm genuinely impressed. The story is completely original, created under supervision from Detective Conan's creator himself. Once again, you take control of Detective Conan accompanied by Togomori and Ran, as they find themselves involved in yet another mysterious murder case. It's up to Conan to uncover the truth and bring the culprit to justice. The art direction in this game is fantastic, the music is phenomenal, and the story is genuinely well done. This is an action-adventure game where you'll spend most of your time exploring a large mansion, talking with NPCs, and gathering clues that will eventually lead you to the killer. One thing to keep in mind is that the game doesn't guide you all the time. There's no clear indicator of where to go next, so you'll need to pay attention to what the characters say, take notes, and remember key details. That's what makes it feel like a proper detective experience. I also like how the tone shifts whenever Conan stumbles upon an important piece of evidence. It really pulls you into the atmosphere. If you're a fan of Detective Conan anime and manga, this game is absolutely worth checking out. And if you're new to the series, this might be a great starting point now that it's finally accessible through the English fan translation. And this marks the end of this list. As usual, if this list proves successful, I will make a part 3. That's it for now. Goodbye.